In 1998, newlyweds Olivia and Marcus Trent kissed their families goodbye and drove away from their Phoenix wedding reception, headed for the airport and a dream honeymoon in Hawaii. They never arrived. For 25 years, their families searched for answers, clinging to hope that grew thinner with each passing season. But when a construction crew breaks ground on a new highway expansion in the Arizona desert, they unearth something that transforms a cold case into a living nightmare. What they discover will reveal that some secrets don't stay buried forever. And the truth about that wedding night is far more sinister than anyone imagined. If you're fascinated by real mysteries and true crime stories that defy explanation, subscribe and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the construction site 20 miles outside Phoenix. Dust clouds rose from heavy machinery as workers prepared lay the foundation for a new highway expansion that would cut through miles of previously untouched desert landscape. Tommy Reeves wiped the sweat from his brow and climbed down from his excavator, frowning at an unusual resistance he'd felt in the earth. He'd been doing this work for 15 years and knew the difference between rock-compacted soil and something that didn't belong. "Hey, Gutierrez," he called to his supervisor, who was reviewing blueprints nearby. "Got something weird here?" Frank Gutierrez looked up from his papers and walked over, his boots crunching on the dry ground. Tommy pointed to a section off disturbed earth where the excavator had scraped away several feet of desert floor. "What am I looking at?" Frank asked, squinting in the bright light. "That's what I want to know." Partially exposed in the excavated area was what appeared to be the roof of a vehicle, its paint faded and covered in a quarter-century of desert dust and debris. It was the deliberate way the earth had been mounted over it that caught Frank's attention. This wasn't a car that had been abandoned or left to rust. This was a car that had been buried. Frank pulled out his phone, his expression grim. "Nobody touch anything else. I'm calling the police." Within 2 hours, the construction site had been transformed into a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the area while officers and forensic technicians carefully excavated around the vehicle. News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras transmitting live footage to every major station in Phoenix. Detective Ray Corderero stood at the edge of the excavation, watching as his team worked to expose the vehicle. It was a white sedan, a late 1990s model. As they cleared more dirt away, he could make out the license plate, still partially visible despite years of deterioration. A young officer approached him with a tablet. "Detective, I ran the plate. Vehicles registered to a Marcus Trent, reported missing in September 1998. Corderero's jaw tightened. He'd been with the Phoenix Police Department for 30 years, and he remembered that case. Everyone did. The newlyweds who'd vanished on their wedding night, driving to the airport for their honeymoon. It had been one of those cases that haunted a community that appeared on anniversary news segments every few years, gradually fading from public consciousness as hope dimmed. "Get me everything we have on that case," Cordero said, quietly, "and find out if any family members are still in the area. They deserve to know before this hits the evening news." As forensic technicians carefully opened the trunk of the buried vehicle, Corderero turned away, already dreading what they might find inside. After 25 years, the desert was finally giving up its secrets, but he suspected that what they were about to discover would raise more questions than it answered. Harper Whitmore stood in her kitchen in Scottsdale preparing dinner for her teenage daughter when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something about the Phoenix area code made her stomach tighten with old familiar dread. "Hello, Miss Whitmore. This is Detective Ray Corderero with the Phoenix Police Department. I'm calling about your sister, Olivia Trent." The knife Harper had been holding clattered to the cutting board. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. It had been 25 years since anyone had called her about Olivia. 25 years since her sister and new brother-in-law had driven away from the Phoenician resort where 200 guests had celebrated their marriage and simply disappeared into the night. "You found something," Harper said, her voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am. I'd prefer to discuss this in person." "Would it but possible for you to come to the station, and I'll need to contact your mother as well? Harper's hand found the edge of the counter for support. My mother passed away 3 years ago. Heart attack. That I'm very sorry. Detective, please just tell me. Did you find my sister? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. We've located the vehicle they were driving. The construction crew discovered it this morning buried in the desert off Route 87. We're in the process of processing the scene now. And Olivia Marcus, Ms. Whitmore, I really think it would be better if you came to the station. Is there someone who can drive you? Harper closed her eyes, understanding what he wasn't saying. After a quarter century, her sister was never coming home. She'd known it, of course. Everyone had known it after the first few months, then the first few years. But knowing and having it confirmed were two different things entirely. I'll be there in an hour, she said and ended the call. Her daughter, Brianna, appeared in the doorway. Her face creased with concern. Mom, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Harper turned to face her 17-year-old. This child who had never known her Aunt Olivia, who had only heard the stories, seen the old photographs that Harper kept in albums she couldn't bear to look at but couldn't bear to put away. They found in Olivia's car. Harper said, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. I need to go to the police station. Brianna crossed the kitchen and wrapped her arms around her mother. I'm coming with you. The Phoenix Police Department's headquarters was downtown, and the drive gave Harper too much time to think, to remember. She kept seeing Olivia in her wedding dress, radiant and laughing, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist, her eyes shining with joy as she'd hug Harper goodbye. Take care of Mom for me, Olivia had whispered in her ear. Both of them, knowing their mother had taken the divorce hard and was drinking too much. I'll call you from Maui. But the call had never come. Detective Corderero met them in the lobby, a tall man in his mid-50s with gray threading through his dark hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. He led them to a small conference room and waited until they were seated before he began. Miss Whitmore, what I'm about to tell you is difficult. The vehicle we found was deliberately buried in a remote location approximately 20 m from where your sister and brother-in-law were last seen. Based on the depth and method of burial, we believe this was done shortly after their disappearance. Harper's hands were shaking. Brianna reached over and took one, squeezing tightly. Did you find them? Harper asked. Did you find their bodies? Corderero's expression was carefully controlled. We found human remains in the trunk of the vehicle. 2 individuals. We'll need dental records to confirm identification, but based on the circumstances and the location, we have every reason to believe these are Olivia and Marcus Trent. The room seemed totaled. Harper heard herself make a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Brianna's grip on her hand tightened. How did they die? Harper managed to ask, was it an accident, a carjacking? The medical examiner is still conducting the autopsy, but I can tell you that this was not an accident. Both victims show signs of trauma consistent with homicide. We're treating this as a double murder investigation. Murder. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. All these years, Harper had imagined scenarios. Car accident in the desert. Bodies never found, kidnapping gone wrong. Even in her darkest moments, the possibility that Olivia and Marcus had staged their own disappearance, though she'd never truly believed that. But murder cold and deliberate, their bodies hidden away like garbage in the trunk of their own car. I need you to understand something, Corderero continued, leaning forward. This case is 25 years old, but the fact that the bodies were buried, that someone took the time and effort to hide them so thoroughly, tells us this wasn't random. Someone knew them. Someone had a reason. Harper looked up at him, her vision blurred with tears. You think you can find who did this after all this time? I'm going to try, but I need your help. I need you to tell me everything you remember about that night, about the days leading up to the wedding, about anyone who might have had a reason to hurt your sister or Marcus. Harper wiped her eyes, trying to steady herself. She'd been 19 when Olivia disappeared, just starting college. Her whole life ahead of her. Now she was 44 with a daughter of her own, and her sister would be forever frozen at 23. Olivia and Marcus were perfect together. Harper began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. They met at Arizona State, both graduating the year before. Marcus was getting his MBA. Olivia was teaching second grade. Everyone loved them. Their wedding was beautiful. No drama, no problems. They were supposed to catch a red-eye flight to Honolulu at midnight. The reception ended around 10 o'clock. They left in Marcus' car, headed for the airport. What time did the reception end exactly? Corderero asked, taking notes. Around 9:45, I think. Olivia changed out of her wedding dress into travel clothes. They said goodbye to everyone, got in the car, and drove away. That's the last time anyone saw them. When did you realize something was wrong? Harper closed her eyes, remembering. Mom called me the next afternoon. She'd been trying to reach Olivia all day. They were supposed to call when they landed in Maui. When they didn't, Mom called the hotel, called the airline. They'd never checked in for their flight. That's when we called the police. And the investigation at the time, they searched everywhere. The route from the Phoenician to Sky Harbor Airport is pretty straightforward. Police checked every inch of it, questioned everyone at the wedding. Marcus' car was gone. Their luggage was gone. Their honeymoon tickets were never used. It was like they vanished into thin air. Corderero nodded slowly. I've pulled the original case files. I'll be reviewing everything, but I want you to think back. Miss Whitmore. Was there anyone who seemed upset at the wedding? Anyone who had a problem with the marriage? An ex-boyfriend? Someone who might have been jealous? Harper thought for a long moment. Olivia dated someone in college before Marcus. Ryan something. Ryan Hollis. I think they broke up maybe 6 months before she met Marcus. It wasn't a good breakup. It called her a lot, showed up at her apartment, but that was 2 years before the wedding. I don't think he even committed the ceremony. Corderero made a note. Anyone else? Marcus had a business partner. They'd started a software company together right after graduation. Olivia mentioned once that there was some tension there, something about money or ownership shares, but I don't remember the details. I was 19 and wrapped up in my own life. Do you remember the partner's name? Cole Brennan, I think. As Corderero continued his questions, Harper felt something shifting inside her. The dull ache of grief she'd carried for 25 years was sharpening into something else. Anger, determination. Her sister's body had been found, but whoever had put her in that trunk, whoever had stolen her future, was still out there, still living, breathing, maybe even thinking they'd gotten away with it. But now, the desert had given up its secret. And Harper was going to make sure that whoever had killed her sister finally faced justice. The Phoenix Police Department's cold case division occupied a floor in the headquarters building. It felt forgotten by time. Boxes of old files lined the walls, and the fluorescent lights hummed with a persistent, irritating frequency. Detective Ray Corderero sat at his desk the morning after meeting with Harper Whitmore, surrounded by everything the department had on the Trent case. The original investigation had been thorough. He had to give them that. Missing person reports filed within 24 hours. Searches conducted along every possible route between the Phoenician Resort and Sky Harbor Airport. Interviews with wedding guests, family members, friends, coworkers, phone records subpoenaed and analyzed. Financial records checked for any unusual activity. And yet nothing. The Newlyweds had simply vanished, and the case had eventually gone cold. Filed away, with hundreds of others that haunted the department's archives. Corderero spread out crime scene photos from yesterday's excavation across his desk. The white sedan had been buried nose down in a shallow ravine, then covered with displaced earth and desert brush. Whoever had done it knew the area well enough to choose a spot that wouldn't be disturbed, at least not for 25 years. His phone rang and he picked up immediately. Cordio. Detective, this is Dr. Sarah Chun from a medical examiner's office. I've completed the preliminary examination of the remains from the Trent case. Corderero grabbed his pen. What can you tell me? Both victims died from gunshot wounds to the head, execution style, small caliber, likely a .22. Based on the positioning of the bodies and the blood spatter patterns inside the trunk, they were shot somewhere else and placed in the vehicle post-mortem. So, they were killed and then transported to the burial site. Correct. I found fibers on the female victim's clothing that don't match anything from the vehicle interior. They appear to be from industrial carpeting, possibly from a warehouse or commercial space. I've sent samples to the lab for analysis. Time of death. Given the state of decomposition and the environmental factors, I'd estimate within 24 hours of their reported disappearance. Dental records confirmed the identities as Olivia and Marcus Trent. Corderero thanked her and ended the call, his mind already working through the implications. Execution-style killing suggested this wasn't a crime of passion or a random act of violence. Someone had planned this. Someone had lured or forced the newlyweds to a secondary location, killed them, and then carefully disposed of the bodies. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Officer Jennifer Park, one of the department's brightest young detectives, poked her head in. Got a minute? I've been running down the names from the original investigation. Come in. What did you find? Park entered, carrying a laptop in a thick folder. I started with the ex-boyfriend Harper Whitmore mentioned, Ryan Hollis. He's clean, at least on paper. No criminal record beyond a DUI in college. He's a dentist now, married with 3 kids, lives in Tempe. Where was he the night of the disappearance? According to his statement from 1998, he was at home with his parents in Flagstaff. They confirmed it at the time. But here's what's interesting. Park opened her laptop and turned it to face Corderero. I pulled his financial records from around that time, 2 weeks before the wedding. Hollis withdrew $15,000 in cash from his savings account. Corderero's eyebrows rose. That's a lot of cash. Gets better. The day after Olivia and Marcus disappeared, he deposited $10,000 back into his account. No explanation for either transaction. Could be nothing. Maybe he was buying a car. Changed his mind. Maybe, but I think it's worth bringing him in for a conversation. Cordio nodded. What about the business partner? Cole Brennan. Park's expression darkened. Now, that's where things get interesting. Brennan and Marcus Trent started a software company called Dating Solutions in 1996. According to incorporation documents, they were 50-50 partners, but 6 months before the wedding, Marcus filed paperwork to dissolve the partnership. Why? The original investigators didn't dig too deep into that, but I made some calls. Turns out Marcus had discovered that Brennan was embezzling from the company approximately $200,000 over the course of a year. Marcus was planning to file criminal charges right after the honeymoon. Corderero leaned back in his chair, pieces clicking into place. So Brennan had motive. Did anyone question him at the time? Briefly. He claimed he was at a business conference in San Diego the night of the disappearance. The hotel confirmed he'd checked in, but that doesn't mean he couldn't have driven back to Phoenix, a 5-hour trip. Where is Brennan now? Park smiled. Grimly. That's the thing. He's still here in Phoenix, still running data sync solutions. Turns out when Marcus disappeared, Brennan got full control of the company. He filed papers declaring Marcus legally dead after 7 years and assumed complete ownership. The company's worth about $40 million now. Corderero whistled low. So he had $200,000 in motive then and a $40 million payoff later. Exactly. And there's one more thing. Park pulled out a photograph from her folder. This is Cole Brennan in 1998. Cordio studied the image. A young man in his 20s, dark hair, confident smile, standing in front of a building with a Data Solutions sign. Now look at this. Park placed another photo beside it. This is from the company's current website. The Cole Brennan in the second photo was older, grayer, but unmistakably the same person, except now he wore expensive suits, drove a Porsche according to social media, and lived in a Paradise Valley mansion that a man who built an empire on his partner's grave, Corderero said quietly, "Let's bring him in and get me everything you can find on his whereabouts the week of the wedding. Phone, records, credit card statements, witness statements. If he was anywhere near Phoenix that night, I want to know about it." As Park left to begin coordinating interviews, Corderero turned back to the crime scene photos. The image of the buried car haunted him. Someone had taken the time to dig a grave large enough for an entire vehicle, had transported 2 bodies to his remote location, had carefully hidden their crime under tons of desert earth. This wasn't the work of an amateur. This was someone who knew what they were doing. Someone who thought they could get away with murder. And for 25 years they had. But Detective Corderero had learned long ago that time had a way of unraveling even the most carefully constructed lies. People talked, relationships ended, consciences festered, and sometimes the earth itself refused to keep secrets forever. He picked up his phone and dialed Harper Whitmore's number. She answered on the first ring. MS. Whitmore, this is Detective Corderero. I have some questions about your sister's husband. Did Marcus ever mention feeling threatened by his business partner? There was a pause, and he could hear Harper thinking, reaching back through decades of memory. Olivia said something once. It was maybe a month before the wedding. She said Marcus was stressed about the business, that Cole had done something that really upset him. But Marcus didn't want to ruin the wedding by dealing with it, so he was going to handle it when they got back from the honeymoon. Did she say what Cole had done? No, just that Marcus had found some irregularities in the company accounts. I remember because Olivia joked that Cole was probably buying too many expensive dinners on the company card. Corderero thanked her and ended the call. Embezzlement wasn't funny money for expensive dinners. $200,000 was serious crime. The kind that could send someone to prison, the kind that might make someone desperate enough to kill. He stood and grabbed his jacket. It was time to have a conversation with Cole Brennan, the man who built a fortune on his missing partner's company. The man who'd had every reason to want Marcus Trent dead and who'd conveniently been out of town when it happened. Or so he claimed. Cole Brennan's office occupied the top floor off a gleaming glass building in North Scottsdale with panoramic views of the desert mountains that surrounded the valley. The reception area was all modern minimalism, chrome and leather and abstract art that probably cost more than most people's cars. Detective Corderero and Officer Park were kept waiting for 20 minutes before Brennan's assistant, a severe L-looking woman in her 40s, finally led them down a hallway lined with photos chronicling Data Sync Solutions' success. Corderero noted that none of the photos included Marcus Trent, as if the company's co-founder had been erased from its history. Cole Brennan stood when they entered, extending his hand with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to projecting confidence. He was 50 now, his dark hair silvering at temples, his suit clearly bespoke. Everything about him spoke of success, of a man who'd built something substantial. Detectives, please sit. My assistant said this was about Marcus Trent. I assume this is related to the news about the car they found. Corderero settled into the chair across from Brennan's massive desk, studying the man's face for any sign of nervousness. He saw none, only a careful, professional concern. Thank you for meeting with us, Mr. Brennan. Yes, we're reinvestigating the disappearance and deaths of Marcus and Olivia Trent. I understand you and Marcus were business partners. We were? Yes, 25 years ago. Brennan leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Marcus's disappearance was devastating, not just personally, but for the company. We were just getting off the ground, and suddenly I was trying to run everything alone while not knowing if my partner was coming back. When did you last see Marcus? Park asked, her pen poised over her notepad. The wedding reception. I was there along with probably 200 other people. Beautiful ceremony. Olivia looked radiant. His voice carried just the right note of nostalgia and sadness. And after they left the reception, I stayed for another hour or so, then drove home. I had an early flight the next morning to San Diego for a conference. Corderero nodded slowly. Tell me about your relationship with Marcus in the months leading up to the wedding. How was the business doing? For the first time, something flickered across Brennan's face. Just for a moment, his jaw. I'll think about it, he said, finally. Don't think too long, my friend. The walls are closing in, and when they do, everyone looks for someone to blame. Make sure that someone isn't you. The line went dead, leaving Cole Brennan alone in his expensive office, staring out at a view he'd paid for with blood money. Ryan Hollis's dental practice occupied a modest building in downtown Tempe, wedged between a coffee shop and a yoga studio. The waiting room smelled off antiseptic and mint, decorated with watercolors of Arizona landscapes and several photos of Hollis with his family, all smiles and coordinated outfits. Detective Corderero and Officer Park had called ahead, requesting a meeting. But Hollis's receptionist informed them he was with a patient. They waited, watching as people came and went, until finally a nurse led them back to Hollis's private office. Ryan Hollis was a slight man, shorter than Corderero had expected, with thinning sandy hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He looked nervous as they entered, standing to shake their hands with a grip that was too firm, overcompensating. "Detectives, please sit. I have to admit, I was surprised to get your call. I haven't thought about Olivia in years." Corderero settled into the chair across from Hollis's desk, noting the family photos prominently displayed. A wife, 3 children, all featuring Hollis in various vacation settings. The picture of a normal, successful life. "Mr. Hollis, we're reinvestigating the disappearance of Olivia and Marcus Trent. As you've probably seen on the news, we've recovered their vehicle and remains." Hollis nodded, his face somber. "Terrible, just terrible. Olivia was a wonderful person. We dated for almost 2 years in college. I was devastated when I heard she disappeared." "Tell us about your relationship with her," Park said. According to several witnesses from that time, the breakup was difficult. A flush crept up Hollis's neck. "We were young. I handled it badly. I probably called her too many times, showed up when I shouldn't have, but that was 6 months before she even met Marcus by the time they got married. I'd moved on. Had you?" Corderero asked. "Because according to Top Hone records from 1998, you called Olivia's apartment 17 times in the week before her wedding." Hollis's face palled. "I was trying to apologize to make peace before she started her new life. The calls were never answered. I never spoke to her." "Where were you the night of September 19th, 1998? "I was in Flagstaff with my parents. My father had just been diagnosed with cancer. I drove up that Friday and stayed the weekend. My mother and father both confirmed that at the time. And yet Park said, pulling out a document, we have toll records showing your car passed through the Flagstaff toll plaza, heading south at 8:30 p.m. that night, and heading north again at 4:15 a.m. the following morning." The color drained completely from Hollis' face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "I don't understand. That's not possible, isn't it? Your parents confirmed you were there, but elderly parents might not notice if their adult son slipped out late at night. The timing works perfectly. You could have driven to Phoenix, intercepted Olivia and Marcus on their way to the airport, and been back before morning." No, that's insane. I would never hurt Olivia. I loved her." "Then explain the $15,000 you withdrew 2 weeks before her wedding," Corderero said, watching Hollis's reaction carefully, "and the $10,000 you deposited the day after she disappeared." Hollis stood abruptly, his chair rolling back and hitting the wall. "I need to call my lawyer." "That's your right," Corderero said calmly. "But let me tell you what I think happened. I think you couldn't accept that Olivia had moved on. I think you watched her fall in love with someone else. Watched her plan a wedding, watched her slip away from you, and something in you snapped. That's not true. I think you followed them that night. Maybe you just wanted to talk to her one last time, convince her she was making a mistake, but things went wrong. Maybe Marcus confronted you. Maybe there was a fight. Stop. You had a gun. Maybe you didn't plan to use it, but in the heat of the moment, you made a choice. And then you had to hide what you'd done. Stop it." Hollis's voice cracked. "I didn't kill anyone. I was in Flagstaff. The money, the toll records, none of that means anything." "Then explain it," Park said, quietly. "Help us understand." Hollis sank back into his chair, his hands shaking. For a long moment, he stared at his desk, at the photos of his family, at the life he'd built. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I did drive to Phoenix that night, but not to see Olivia. I went to see a woman I'd been having an affair with. Her name was Jessica. She lived in Scottsdale." Corderero and Park exchanged glances. "You're married?" It wasn't then, but I was engaged. My fiancée. She's my wife now. She had no idea. I used the excuse of being in Flagstaff to slip away. The money it withdrew was to pay for the apartment I'd rented for Jessica. The money I deposited was what was left after I broke things off with her that night. We'll need Jessica's full name and contact information. Park said she's married now, too. She has kids. I haven't spoken to her in 20 years. Mr. Hollis, if your alibi is legitimate, we need to verify it. Otherwise, you remain a suspect in a double homicide. Hollis pulled out a pen with trembling hands and wrote down a name and last known address on a notepad. Jessica Moreno. She lived on Hayden Road. I'd know where she is now. As Corderero took the paper, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood. We'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to make a formal statement. And don't leave town, Mr. Hollis. Outside in the parking lot, Park turned to Corderero. You believe him about the affair? Maybe. But even if he was with this Jessica woman, the timing still works. He could have met her, left, intercepted the trends, and then gone back to Flagstaff. We need to find Jessica Moreno and see if her story matches his. What was the text? Corderero showed her his phone. Warren came through for the old data warehouse. Forensics team is heading there now. The warehouse sat in an industrial area of Tempe that had seen better days. Many of the surrounding buildings were vacant, their windows broken, their parking lots cracked and overgrown with desert weeds. The dating building itself had been sold years ago, converted into storage units. Corderero and Park met the forensics team outside. Dr. Sarah Chun, the medical examiner, was already there along with 2 technicians carrying equipment designed to detect trace evidence that might have survived 2.5 decades. We're looking for blood spatter, ballistic evidence, anything that suggests violence occurred here, Chun explained as they entered the building. The carpet's long gone, but if they killed the trench here, there might be traces in the concrete beneath, especially if the bodies were left for any period of time. They worked methodically, the technicians spraying luminol in sections, photographing any areas that showed fluorescence. Hours passed. The sun set, darkness falling over the industrial park, and still they found nothing. Corderero was beginning to think they were wrong about the location when one of the technicians called out from a corner of the warehouse that had once been partitioned off as an office space. Detective, you need to see this. The luminol had revealed a pattern on the concrete floor, glowing an eerie blue-green under UV light. Not just spatter, but a large pool and drag marks leading toward what had been a loading dock. That's a lot of blood, Chin said, quietly, consistent with 2 victims bleeding out. The drag marks suggest they were moved after death, probably loaded in tow a vehicle. Can you tell how old it is? Park asked. Luminol reacts to blood regardless of age. But given the location, the pattern, and the amount, I'd say this matches our timeline. We'll need to do further testing, try to extract DNA, if any survived. But this looks like our primary crime scene. Corderero stood in the warehouse, imagining what had happened here 25 years ago. Olivia and Marcus, newly married, hours away from starting their honeymoon. Someone had lured them here or forced them. Someone had executed them in this cold, empty space, then loaded their bodies into the trunk of their own car. Bag everything, he said, every sample, every fiber. Someone murdered them here, and if there's even a trace of evidence left, I want it found. As the forensics team worked through the night, Corderero stepped outside and called Harper Whitmore. She deserved to know what they'd discovered. She answered immediately. Detective Miss Whitmore, we've located what we believe is the primary crime scene, the warehouse where Data Sync Solutions operated in 1998. We're processing it now. There was a long silence. Then Cole Brennan's warehouse. Yes, he killed my sister. He killed them both. And then he took everything Marcus had built. My God, we don't have enough evidence yet, make an arrest, but we're getting closer. I promise you, we're going to find out exactly what happened that night. After ending the call, Corderero looked up at the stars visible above the warehouse. The same stars that had watched over this building the night Olivia and Marcus Trent took their last breaths. The same stars that had seen their killer walk away free. But not anymore. The evidence was there, buried in concrete and time, and Detective Corderero was going to bring it into the light. The DNA results from the warehouse came back 3 days later. Detective Corderero sat in his office reading the report with growing certainty. The blood found in the old data sync warehouse matched both Olivia and Marcus Trent. But there was something else. Something that changed everything. A third DNA profile, degraded but still identifiable, extracted from skin cells found mixed with the blood evidence. The profile belonged to someone who'd been in direct contact with the victims at the time of their deaths. Cordio immediately ran the profile through every database available. No match in CODIS, the National Criminal Database. No match in Arizona's state records. Whoever had killed the Trent had never been arrested, never been fingerprinted, never left their DNA in any official system. But that didn't mean the profile was useless. It meant they needed to get DNA from their suspects. Officer Park knocked on his door, entering with her laptop. I found Jessica Moreno. She's Jessica Vance now. Lives in Gilbert with her husband and 2 kids. I spoke to her on the phone, and she confirmed Ryan Hollis's story. Says he came to her apartment the night of September 19th, 1998 around 10:30 p.m. and stayed until almost 4 a.m. They broke up that night. She was pretty upset when I called, said her husband doesn't know about the affair, and she'd appreciate us being discreet. Cordero leaned back in his chair. So, Hollis's alibi checks out that he couldn't have been at the warehouse. Looks that way, but I did find something interesting about his financial records. Park turned her laptop to show him the $15,000 he withdrew. It wasn't just for the apartment. He also made a payment to someone named Victor Salazar. Corderera sat up straighter. Salazar, the same man Brennan owed gambling debts to. Exactly $5,000 paid in cash according to Hollis's records 2 weeks before the wedding. What was Hollis doing paying money to a man connected to organized crime? I asked him that this morning. He claims he attended a few poker games, lost some money, paid it back, says he didn't know who Salazar really was. Corderero stood and grabbed his jacket. It's time we had a conversation with Victor Salazar. Where is he now? That's the thing. He's completely legitimate these days. Owns a chain of car dealerships across the valley. Does charity work. Sits on the board of a children's hospital. If he was ever connected to organized crime, he's cleaned up his act remarkably well. Or he's just better at hiding it. Set up a meeting. I want to talk to him today. Victor Salazar's flagship dealership sprawled across several acres in central Phoenix. Gleaming rows of luxury vehicles arranged under colorful banners advertising special financing. The showroom was all glass and marble, and Salazar's office was on the second floor, overlooking his automotive empire. The man himself was in his late 60s, silver-haired and distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Cordero's monthly salary. He stood when they entered, his handshake firm, his smile professionally warm. "Detectives, please have a seat. My secretary said this was about the Trent case. Terrible thing. Just terrible. I've been following it on the news. Mr. Salazar, we understand you ran high-stakes poker games in the late 1990s. Corderero began, watching the man's face carefully. Salazar's smile didn't waver. That was a lifetime ago, detective. I made some poor choices in my youth. I've spent the last 20 years building legitimate businesses and giving back to." She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind churning through everything Detective Corderero had told her. The warehouse, the DNA evidence. Victor Salazar's name kept appearing, connected, both suspects present at the scene where her sister had died. At 2:00 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went to her home office. She'd kept everything related to Olivia's disappearance in boxes in the closet, unable to look at them, but unable to throw them away. Now she pulled them out, spreading newspaper clippings and police reports and personal items across her desk. There was Olivia's wedding invitation. The script elegant and hopeful. Photos from the reception. Olivia laughing. Marcus with his arm around her waist. Guest lists. Vendor contracts. all the detritus of a celebration that had ended in murder. Harper picked up the guest list, running her finger down the names. She'd looked at this list hundreds of times over the years, wondering if the killer had been there, smiling and drinking champagne while planning what came next. Cole Brennan's name was there, of course. Ryan Hollis wasn't. He hadn't been invited. But there were others, names she'd forgotten, people who'd been on the periphery of Olivia's life. One name jumped out at her. Thomas Salazar. She didn't remember anyone by that name at the wedding, but there it was on the list with a +1 notation. Salazar. Could it be a coincidence? She grabbed her phone and called Detective Corderero, not caring about the hour. He answered groggy. "Miss Whitmore, what's wrong?" "The guest list from the wedding. There's a name on it. Thomas Salazar. Is he related to Victor Salazar?" She heard rustling, Cordero waking up fully. "Spell the first name." Thomas. He had a +1. I don't remember who he was or how he knew Olivia and Marcus. "I'm calling Officer Park. Stay on the line." Harper waited, her heart pounding. After a few minutes, Corderero came back. "Park's checking the records now. Thomas Salazar is Victor's nephew. He would have been in his early 20s in 1998. Park's pulling his information. Why would Victor Salazar's nephew be invited to Olivia's wedding? That's what we're going to find out. Miss Whitmore, do you still have the RSVP cards from the wedding?" Harper looked through the boxes, finding the small stack of response cards her mother had saved. She flipped through them until she found it. Thomas Salazar, attending with guest, written in neat block letters. "I have it. It's here. Don't touch it anymore. I'm sending someone to pick it up. There might be fingerprints or DNA on that card that we can use." After ending the call, Harper continued searching through the boxes. In a folder of wedding correspondence, she found something else. An email printout from Marcus's account dated 3 weeks before the wedding. It was from someone named Tommy asking about final numbers for the rehearsal dinner. Marcus had replied, confirming space for 30 people at the restaurant. At the bottom, Tommy had added, "Looking forward to celebrating with you both. You and Cole have built something special." Harper's breath caught. Tommy had known both Marcus and Cole. He'd been involved in the business somehow. She took a photo of the email and sent it to Cordero.at. The police station, Corderero, and Park were already pulling up everything they could find on Thomas Salazar. His driver's license photo showed a man now in his late 40s, dark-haired like his uncle with the same calculating eyes. "He works for Victor," Park said, reading from her screen. "Has for the last 20 years started as a salesman at the dealerships. Now he's vice president of operations, but before that in the late 90s he worked for Data Sync Solutions." Corderero looked up sharply. "He worked for Marcus and Cole, according to tax records." "Yes, he was employed there from 1996 to 1999, right through the time of the murders. So, he knew Marcus personally. He was at the wedding and he had access to the warehouse." Corderero stood. "We need to bring him in now." They found Thomas Salazar at his home in Paradise Valley, a sprawling ranch-style house with a view off Camelback Mountain. He answered the door in a robe, his face showing annoyance at being woken at 4:00 a.m. Thomas Salazar. "I'm Detective Corderero. We need to ask you some questions about Marcus and Olivia Trent." The annoyance on Tommy's face shifted to something more guarded. "What about them? You knew them. You attended their wedding. You worked for their company. That was a long time ago. What's this about? We're investigating their murders. And your DNA is related to DNA we found at the crime scene. We need you to come to the station and answer some questions. I'm not going anywhere without my lawyer and my uncle's lawyer." "Your uncle? Why would you need Victor Salazar's lawyer?" Tommy's jaw tightened. "Because I know how this works. You're trying to pin something on my family, but we had nothing to do with what happened to Marcus and Olivia. Then you won't mind providing a DNA sample to eliminate yourself from our investigation. I'll discuss it with my lawyer. Now, get off my property." As they drove back to the station, Park turned to Corderero. "He's going to lawyer up and stonewall us. Let him. We have enough for a warrant now. His DNA is related to the crime scene sample. He had access to the warehouse. and he knew the victims, that's probable cause. By dawn, they had the warrant. By noon, Thomas Salazar was sitting in an interrogation room, his lawyer beside him, refusing to answer questions. But Corderero had been a detective long enough to know when someone was scared. And Tommy Salazar was terrified, his hands shaking slightly as he sat rigidly in his chair, his eyes darting to the door every few minutes. "Your uncle killed them, didn't he?" Corderero said, quietly, "And you helped. Maybe you didn't want to. Maybe he forced you. But you were there, Tommy. Your DNA is at that warehouse. You can't run from that. My client isn't saying anything without Cole. Brennan is gone. Fled to Costa Rica. That leaves you holding the bag for a double murder. Your uncle's DNA is at the scene, too. He's going down for this. The only question is whether you go down with him or whether you tell us what really happened. And maybe, just maybe, the prosecutor goes easier on you." Tommy looked at his lawyer, who shook his head, but Tommy's resolve was cracking. Corderero could see it in his eyes, the weight of 25 years of secrets pressing down on him. "I want a deal," Tommy said suddenly. "Full immunity for testimony." "Tommy, don't," his lawyer began. "I'm not going to prison for something my uncle did. I was 22 years old. I didn't know what he was planning. I didn't know until it was too late." Cordio leaned forward. "Tell Mew Hat happened that night." Tommy closed his eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was hollow. "Cole came to my uncle, desperate. Marcus was going to file charges against him, ruin him. Cole owed Uncle Victor money, too. A lot of money. Uncle Victor said he could make the problem go away. But Cole had to help. Help how? Cole called Marcus the day of the wedding. Told him there was an emergency at the warehouse. Something about a break-in. Marcus said he'd stop by on the way to the airport just for a few minutes. He brought Olivia because he didn't want to waste time dropping her off. Parker's pen moved rapidly across her notepad. What happened when they arrived? I was there. Uncle Victor made me come. He said I needed to learn how business was done sometimes. I thought he was just going to scare them, threaten Marcus or something. But when they walked in, Tommy's voice broke. Hesh at them just like that. Marcus tried to fight back, protect Olivia, but Uncle Victor shot him first, then her. It was so fast. There was so much blood. The room was silent except for the hum of the recording equipment. Cole was there too, Tommy continued. He was supposed Tobe in San Diego, but he'd driven back. The three of us wrapped the bodies, put them in the trunk of their car. Uncle Victor had already picked out a spot in the desert, had equipment ready to dig. We buried them that night. Then we cleaned the warehouse. Uncle Victor knew how to hide evidence. He'd done it before. What happened to the gun? Uncle Victor kept it. He has a collection, keeps them locked up in a storage unit. He said it was insurance in case anyone ever tried to cross him. Cordereras, dude. Write down the address of that storage unit and start writing down everything you remember about that night, every detail, because that's the only way you're getting any kind of deal. As Tommy began to write, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. Corderero stepped out of the interrogation room. Park followed him into the hallway. We have him, she said. We have Victor Salazar. Get a warrant for that storage unit and put out an APB for Salazar. I don't want him getting on a plane to join Brennan in Costa Rica. But even as he said it, Corderero knew that men like Victor Salazar didn't run. They fought, and they were most dangerous when cornered.